I want to just stop you on that a little bit because that's a
Go ahead.
really interesting combination of words that we don't hear a lot, which is compliant, decentralized finances or exchanges. Can you kind of explain what that really means?
Sure. Yeah, I know we're bouncing off a lot of topics here, but
Yeah.
yes. So in terms of what that means or how we would say it, we could kind of divide up like the cryptocurrency community or movement or whatever you want to call it into two major categories, I think. One
Yeah.
is this sort of like hardcore group that is basically going to build things around their philosophical beliefs, which is going to look like these kind of like open public protocols
Hmm.
that are completely censorship resistant. Things can't get changed. If there's a hack or a bug, it's like there's no recourse. They're just like completely open. It's kind of like Wild West to some extent, which is a
Right.
really interesting idea
Mm.
of how to maintain and operate a database
Yeah.
and the applications that run on it. You've seen a lot of stable coins lately that have had issues around this with hacks and bugs, especially on Ethereum.
Hmm.
And like that's one form of this sort of venture. And all those stable coins, at least the ones I'm exposed to, they don't have controls like KYC, AML, for example.
Hmm.
So when I start to talk about things like regulated DeFi, or like what is a regulated DEX?
Hmm.
Okay, well, a regulated DEX is an exchange that's built on a blockchain, of course, and gives the users full custody of their assets. So they can trade peer to peer. They don't need to put their assets into some sort of master wallet or some sort of exchange wallet.
Hmm.
So they retain custody.
Hmm.
And it's going 24/7 and so forth. I mean, it's not something that has like, these markets are only going to be open from like 9 to 5 or whatever, so it has all those same sort of features. Where it's a little bit different though is that your blockchain account is actually going to have to be white labeled by the platform to, or white listed rather, by the platform to get access. So one of the main reasons, or one of the main issues that regulators are really trying to deal with cryptocurrency and a lot of financial law in general, is they're trying to stop things like money laundering, right?
Hmm.
And so you need to be able to have a sort of system of checks and balances in place to mitigate that. And one of the main features is something like KYC.
Yeah.
So when a user registers an account with our regulated DEX, when we launch it, we're getting licensed in Singapore right now. We can talk about that a little bit more if
Hmm.
you want more updates on that. But when a user registers their account, they'll have to go through a KYC process. And then when they're on our platform, smart contracts are automatically going to recognize their account and the laws within their jurisdiction, what types of assets that they should be able to buy or trade or
Hmm.
sell. And if they're doing anything that's outside the scope of the compliance framework of the jurisdiction in which they live, they're
Hmm.
going to be denied the ability to carry out that trade. So there's this kind of mix of bringing in a compliance framework, embedding it into the technology, into the token, into the account layer, right? And kind of putting that into a sort of integrated model with what we would call a decentralized exchange.
Hmm.
This path of doing things, like one, we don't want to go build something in the shadows. We want to build alongside regulators. We see a vision in the future where there's going to be a lot more traction and success for businesses that are willing to work with regulators. And in terms of our client base too, we're targeting institutional finance. Now, we've been on the ground with these guys, talking to them about our technology for
Yeah.
more than 6 months now. Just like getting feedback, getting into conversations, seeing where people are at, and so forth. So institutional finance, one of the things we regularly hear, especially from these bigger asset managers, is that they're not going to deploy something on a chain where you don't have any clawback mechanism if there's like a hack or a bug or something like that. And they want to be able to deploy assets into like a regulated environment, like something that's already aligned with how they operate. They don't want to just jump into a sort of Wild West situation. And especially, I mean, it's not that hard to imagine this. I mean, if you're managing like billions of dollars of assets, like you're not going to deploy those into a place where, oh, there's a hacker, a bug, and you know, I can't get recourse for that. And oh yeah, by the way, that's actually a violation of securities law, you know? So
Yeah, but I do want to push back a little bit, Ron, where I
oh
think
yeah, go for it.
I think people are gonna have a problem with you calling this decentralized exchange. I think there's a very clear notion that in the blockchain space, a decentralized exchange is that once it's put out there, no one's in control. So how would you justify calling yourself a decentralized exchange in that sense?
Well, I think somebody's always in control, right? I mean, I think that there's a bit of a misnomer in like the
But
blockchain.
can anyone launch like a version of the exchange?
What do you mean? Can anybody launch a version of the exchange? Like, could somebody like is our code open
Yeah.
source and available to people? No. Yeah,
Okay.
our code is going to stay closed source.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be a lot of people are gonna say, well, you know, if your source is closed, if you closed source, how can you call yourself decentralized? Because again, we don't know what's going on in the background. We don't know if the logic or like if there's any bugs that
Hmm.
might be exploited. If it was open source, we were to see that and kind of fix it. The community kind of fix it.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a fair critique. I think the way that I and our team thinks about this is that you can look at this topic on a continuum. I think a lot of the time this conversation can turn into like a decentralized exchange has these features, and if you cross one of these lines, you can no longer justify it being a decentralized exchange.
Yeah.
We've made a variety of informed concessions to make sure that the product that we're building can actually fit with the demands and the needs of the audience that we're trying to target.
Mhm.
If we were to go out and build with like a sort of hardcore philosophy, we're going to have a decentralized exchange. It's going to be open source. It's going to be on an open protocol. There's going to be no recourse. There's going to be no KYC, AML checks and balances. We would basically be destroying the opportunity that we're trying to build right now with institutional finance. We would knock on their door. They'd look at it for 2 seconds and then say goodbye. I mean,
And
that
there's already a market. You know, there's already products that fits that market.
there's already products that fit that market.
Yeah, I mean, you like, you know, IDEX, for example, for Ethereum. So what you're essentially saying is that um, that's not really the audience that you're targeting. And if someone's looking for decentralized, true, like open source, anyone could run the contract, that's not what Shintai is, and that's not who Shintai is meant for. It's meant for more established players from traditional finance who might want to dip their toes into, you know, this new area of blockchain assets, who are not yet comfortable because of the regulations that they are under.
Yes, that's 100% correct, and I don't think some of those regulations are necessarily going to change too. I mean, that's why we're already seeing